We're now at the end of sophomore biology, and for my last project, I'm making a video. This semester, I chose to do my project on how practice affects how good you are at a skill and how much it helps you improve. This is because I have a problem. The problem is that all the best drummers use traditional grip drumming, but I'm really not good at it and I want to improve. So I came up with my driving question, which is, what is the best way to develop a new skill and what parts of the body does that affect? My claim for this question was that consistently practicing a skill leads to proficiency and more ability in it. So, with this start, I began my research on how practice works, what makes the best kind of practice, and what I should do for my required experiment. Research conclusions. As the year went on, we had a whole lot of time to research our topic, and these are the conclusions I came up with from everything that I've read and learned. Different types of practice. Deliberate practice. One type of practice that came up more than any other type was deliberate practice. Basically, deliberate practice is where you are required to focus on what you're practicing, and the whole point is to become better at the skill you are learning. For example, if you're practicing basketball and you want to improve your jumper, deliberate practice will be focusing on how to make your jumper better. For our purposes, let's say wrist flick, and then practice that wrist flick to improve your shot accuracy. Rote repetition. This is the type of practice that we do a lot in school, because the whole point of rote repetition is to do something over and over again until it is basically ingrained in your brain. An example of rote repetition that all Algebra 2 people know is singing the quadratic formula song until you will never ever forget it. Varied practice. This last type of practice is basically where you take the skill you want to learn, and when you practice it, you break the practice up into cycles where you can apply the skill in different situations, and you have less repetition overall. For example, if you're learning how to play soccer, varied practice could be where you practice your long-range kicks for a while, then switch to dribbling, and then switch to goal kicks. And this could keep going, but you get the point. My experiment. So, since we had to do an experiment this time around, I wanted to do an experiment centered around my problem, not being able to drum with a traditional grip. With this in mind, I designed my experiment to use practicing a specific piece of music to help me learn traditional grip. I worked with Mr. Nicholas to help me choose a snare solo piece, and I came up with an experiment design where I practiced for half an hour very consistently using the deliberate practice method and have Mr. Nick rating my progress every Friday. Why I chose deliberate practice. The reason that I chose deliberate practice is that this type of practice will be best for focusing on fixing problems with both technique and musical errors. The reason that I chose deliberate practice is that this type of practice will be best for focusing on fixing problems with both technique and musical errors. This is because when you use deliberate practice, you spend time focusing on all the hard parts, and so the more you practice, the more automatic and easier the task will be. This happens because as you keep practicing, you refine your neural pathways so that your brain is using less function on the task and thinking about it less. Deliberate practice also has a big effect on your cerebellum. Although I have definitely not practiced enough for anything to happen to me, but as people practice a motor skill more and more while focusing on their mistakes and fixing them, their cerebellums will often increase in size. The best way to improve using deliberate practice is to start practicing at a pace where you can handle the task, and when you run into a problem, you don't move on until you can overcome it. This leads to being able to be proficient at the task because it becomes almost a second nature. Experiment conclusions. When I started my experiment, I had to watch videos to learn how to do the grip right, and let's just say the first couple of days were slow. I couldn't figure out how to get the same rebound as I could with match grip. So when I went in for the first performance, I stumbled through the piece quite a bit and was surprised I even got a 3. As the days went on though, I did begin to get the hang of it, and while I won't say I'm an expert, I will say that I can play fairly advanced music with it. Also, as time went on, I did my next 2 performances, and my ratings drastically increased on them. Here's the graph of my performance ratings. My method of using deliberate practice is honestly what I really feel helped me. Usually what I would do is play the song until I got to a point where I was stuck, and then I would focus on the part for practice that day. I think that using this practice really helped get the technique hammered down for me, and I think that deliberate practice was really the best choice. Here's me playing the piece using the traditional technique. Conclusion. Overall, I think that this semester I picked a really fun topic. I was glad not only to learn about how to practice, which is going to be very useful in life, but also how to drum with the traditional grip, which is important if I want to be a great drummer. In the end, I really learned that no matter how hard a task seems, the one way to get better at it is to practice.